Hi, I'm Bobby Ingersoll from New York. Only a few years ago, there was a great awakening in the human mind. Men began to inquire, by what right does a crowned robber make me work for him? That man was called a traitor. Others said, by what right does a robed priest rob me? That man was called infidel. And whenever he asked a question of that kind, the clergy protested. When they found that the earth was round, the clergy protested. When they found that the stars were not made out of the scraps left over on the sixth day of creation, but were really great, shining, wheeling worlds, the clergy protested and said, when will the spirit of investigation stop? When I think of how long our fathers were slaves, I'm amazed. It wasn't until August 28, 1833, that Great Britain abolished human slavery in her colonies. And it wasn't until January 1st, 1863, that Abraham Lincoln wiped from our flag the stigma of disgrace. Abraham Lincoln, in my judgment, the grandest man ever president of the United States, and upon whose monument the words could truthfully be written, here lies the only man in the history of the world who, having been clothed with almost absolute power, never abused it except on the side of mercy. Think how long we clung to the institution of human slavery, how long lashes upon the naked back were the legal tender for labor performed. When the pulpit of this country deliberately and willfully changed the cross of Christ into the whipping post, liberty of thought includes the right to think right and the right to think wrong. Why? Because that's the means by which we arrive at truth. If we knew the truth before, we wouldn't need to think. Suppose I read the Bible, and when I get through it, I make up my mind that it was written by men. Along comes the preacher of my church, and he says, did you read that book? I did. Do you believe it's divinely inspired? I say to myself, if I don't say I'll believe, I'll never get elected to Congress. Now, what should I do? Should I say, I've read it, and I don't believe it? Or should I hem and haw and pretend to believe it, and go away with that man's respect, hating myself for a cringing coward? I'd rather a person would tell me what they honestly think and preserve their dignity, rather than preserve their dignity. I'd rather be a dignified unbeliever than an undignified believer. I think I will stand higher at Judgment Day, if there is one, and stand with as good a chance to get my case dismissed with costs as a man who sneaks through life pretending he believes what he does not. I'm going to say my say, I'm going to do it kindly, and I'm going to do it distinctly, but I'm going to do it. Now, if men have been slaves, what about women? Women have been the slaves of slaves. That's a pretty hard position to occupy in this world. Nearly every religion has accounted for all the trouble in this world by the crime of a woman. I read in a book that the Supreme Being concluded to make a world and one man, but he noticed that he got lonesome, and he wandered around as if he were waiting for a train. There was nothing to interest him. No news, no papers, no politics, no tax policy to argue about. And since the devil hadn't appeared yet, there was no recreation. Or even civil service reform. Well, he wandered around the garden until finally the Supreme Being made him a companion. He took a rib, or as the French would call it, a cutlet, out from this man, and he made a woman. And considering the raw material, I consider it the most successful job ever performed. And the man and woman were told certain things they might do and one thing they couldn't do. And of course they did it. I would have done it in 15 minutes. 30 minutes later, there wouldn't have been an apple left on that tree. Nearly all the religions of this world account for the existence of evil by a story like that. Now, my friends, it seems to me that the woman is the equal of man. If there's any man I detest, it's the man who thinks he's the head of the family. The man who thinks he's the boss. Imagine a young man and young woman courting, walking out in the moonlight, and the nightingale singing a song of pain and love, as though the thorn touched her heart. Imagine them stopping there in the moonlight, and starlight and song, and saying, now here, let's settle who's boss. I tell you, it's an infamous word and an infamous feeling. A man who's boss. And when he speaks, let all the rest of them be still. Some mighty idea is about to be launched from his mouth. If women have been the slaves of slaves, what shall I say of children? The little children in the alleys and sub-cellars who turn pale when they hear their father's footsteps, who run away when they hear their mothers call their names. The children of poverty, crime, the children of brutality, wherever you are, flotsam and jetsam upon the wild, mad sea of life, my heart goes out to you. When your child commits a wrong, take it in your arms. Let it feel your heart beat against its heart. Let the child know you really and truly and sincerely love it. Yet some good Christians, when a child commits a fault, drive it from the door and say, "Never do you darken this house again." And then these same people will get down on their knees and ask God to take care of the child they have driven from the home. I will never ask God to take care of my children unless I'm doing my level best to do the same. But I'll tell you, what I will say to my children. Go where you will, commit what crime you may, fall to what depth of degradation you will. You can never commit any crime that will shut my door. My arms, my heart to you. As long as I live, you shall have no more sincere friend.